All right, if at first you don't succeed, then try again. I think W.C. Fields said if you don't succeed after that, then stop. You're making a fool of yourself. That's another story. That is the thought process, though, for Idaho lawmakers who, again, want to try and change requirements of a citizen ballot initiative in Idaho. New proposal was pitched this morning to basically increase current requirements to make that bar a lot higher. Joe Paris has followed this topic for a number of years because, yeah, it has been a couple of years, Joe, that they've been trying to get this. So what's the new angle? What's different from, say, 2021 when they tried this?
Well, yeah, this is a new angle into the conversation. It really takes this from the legislature over to the people of Idaho. And
Okay.
I'll explain here. So this whole story, as we touched on, it dates back a few years. In 2021, Idaho lawmakers actually passed a bill on the initiative process that Governor Little signed into law. And under it, the threshold for qualifying a voter initiative went from getting signatures from 6% of registered voters in 18 out of Idaho's 35 legislative districts to 6% of registered voters in 35 of Idaho's 35 legislative districts, so all of them. Now, Governor Little wrote in his signing letter in 2021 that, quote, whether SB 1110, which was the name of the bill, whether it amounts to an impermissible restriction in violation of our Constitution is highly fact-dependent and ultimately a question for the Idaho judiciary to decide. Well, they did. In 2021, a unanimous Idaho Supreme Court decision overturned the new threshold for the initiative process, resetting it back to where it is now, 18 out of 35 districts at 6%. And an Idaho Supreme Court opinion included the thought that, quote, a majority of the court held that the initiative referendum power is a fundamental right reserved to the people of Idaho to which strict scrutiny applies. So let's take a look at the proposal where it sits right now. But the whole angle into this, instead of the lawmakers, what if the people of Idaho voted to make that same change, a change that, again, would require 6% of registered voters in 35 of Idaho's 35 legislative districts to qualify an initiative? Well, this is the pitch from Senator Doug Okonowitz.
So what this approach does is it puts the question to the people, and it allows them to make that decision and decide if this is something that's in their best interest. So that should inoculate it from any legal troubles, and we get back to the issue.
So we've heard from Idaho Republican lawmakers and leaders in recent years that the current status of the voter initiative process boxes out the voice of rural Idaho. Critics of the status quo, as it sits now, also say that the system risks seeing an avalanche of initiatives like the state of California has seen. For perspective on the realities of running an initiative campaign, I spoke with Luke Mayville, the co-founder of Reclaim Idaho. That is the group that got Medicaid expansion on the ballot and did have it passed successfully. Now, Mayville tells me that the proposed change would essentially prevent grassroots campaigns for a variety of reasons.
That would make it virtually impossible for any grassroots group to ever get an initiative on the ballot again. It's possible that if you're an organization with millions of dollars, you could still do it. But it's just much too high of a hurdle for any citizen group to clear. One main reason is because if there were an opposition group that poured millions of dollars into defeating a campaign, all they need to do is defeat the campaign in one district. If they can just keep the initiative off the ballot in one district, they keep it off. They keep it off permanently, even if voters in 34 other districts wanted it.
So the big difference here is the way the topic is being approached. The Idaho Supreme Court made it clear they don't think the Idaho legislature should be able to put those ballot requirements onto the people of Idaho. However, if the people of Idaho want to do it to themselves, well, that's their prerogative. Now, if the idea passes through lawmakers and does make the ballot, only a simple majority vote would be needed to get the idea passed and the constitutional change. So yes, this would be changing the Constitution of the state of Idaho, so a big ask if we get to that point. But Brian, I do want to mention to you real quickly that if it does pass the House and the Senate, it does have to pass by a 2/3 majority like we saw last session with lawmakers being able to call themselves back.
Right.
So it'd be the same process. It'll be interesting, though, to see if this goes this far, and I'd be interested to see on a vote if Idahoans would be in favor of this or not.
2/3 of the legislature, but only a simple majority of the people would have to vote for it. So,
yeah.
All right, we'll see if we'll get that choice. All right, thank you very much, Joe.